2 months after retiring from football, sport is still a big part of David Beckham's life. He remains one of the most recognisable sportsmen in the world. And one group of school children are about to get a big surprise.
We have an extra special guest coming to join us for our session. I'd like to welcome Sky Ambassador David Beckham. David Beckham.
David was visiting a school in Bedford where sport has transformed lives. After proving he's still as active as ever, we spoke about his latest mission.
First of all, how do we introduce you? Is it former footballer, ambassador, model, father, Mr. Posh Spice? What do you prefer?
David's good, pretty good. I've had the retired footballer quite a few times in the last few weeks,
yeah.
So just David's good.
Just on with that one. Now you're here today as part of Sky Sports Living for Sports programme. Tell us about that and why you wanted to get involved.
I wanted to get involved because obviously I've gained so much from being in a sport, from being in football. And when I was 8-9 years old, you know, I was always looking for a mentor. You know, a mentor in kind of in sport, in life. You know, I had my parents, but you know, I wanted someone else to look up to. And obviously, myself being a Manchester United fan, you know, Brian Robson for me was someone that I looked up to, someone that achieved so much in you know, his sport. I wanted to achieve the same thing. You know, I wanted to wear the same jersey as him. I wanted to captain England. I wanted to represent England. And I think what Sky have created here is something where, you know, young kids are able to look up to, you know, athletes like Sir Chris Hoy, like Jess Ennis, you know, like other athletes that are involved in this initiative, and they can be their mentors, and that's the special thing, and that's why I, you know, personally wanted to be involved.
And how much of a difference then can it make to young people's lives getting involved with sport?
You know, it's something that I'm very proud of, what I've done in my career, and obviously to now go on to something like this where I'm kind of giving back in a way that is helping the future of, you know, future of our country or future, you know, sporting heroes, it's something special for me.
It's all right to be different, you know, it's all right to make sacrifices. Like I said before, I made sacrifices when I was your age. And some of my friends wanted to go and hang out down the street on the shop corner, you know, skateboard parks, you know, and there's nothing wrong with going to a skateboard park, but if you want to be successful, and if you want to do certain things and want to be a certain person, then there are sacrifices that you make.
And do you think enough is being done at schools? They're talking now about bringing back competitive sport. How important do you think that would be to encourage the elite sportsmen and women of the future?
For me personally, I think, you know, competitiveness is really important in children's lives, in many ways. I think it has to be fair, of course, you know, because you know, a couple of my sons go to a school that is very competitive, but in a way that also helps the children that are not winning the races or not winning the football. You know, they're helping them in many other ways. So I think, you know, what children are doing nowadays, you know, things have to be competitive. You know, it's important for the future of, you know, the sport going forward. I think, you know, because when you get to a certain point in your life as a child, you know, 16, 17, it really becomes competitive. And if you haven't learnt that from a young age, I think that, you know, that could affect the way children are, you know, when they go into different sports. But like I said, it's also important that if they're not the best football players, if they're not the best tennis players, that doesn't mean to say they're not going to have a future in that game. You know, they might go on to be a coach. You know, some of the best footballing managers in the world are, you know, not ex-footballers, you know, and they've not kicked a ball before in their life. So, you know, that says a lot. I think that's what's important, to have that competitiveness, but also have
a heart, you know, that actually puts their arm around a kid and says, just because you've not won a race, it doesn't mean that you're not good at that sport, and it doesn't mean that you can't enjoy that sport. If you enjoy it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're the best at it. That's not the most important thing in the world. You know, if you enjoy doing a sport, you do it. I was listening to a conversation of a group of young kids that were waiting to do their events, and I heard one of the boys turn around and say, I might go and do the javelin. And one of his friends turned around to him and say, why would you go and do that? That's embarrassing. And something like that, I actually turned around to the little boy and said, go and do the javelin. If you want to do the javelin, it's about having your own opinion. It's about believing in yourself, and you know, that's part of being successful.
Has your exercise routine changed then since you retired? You know, how have things like that changed?
Well, I think obviously I've had 22 years in professional football, so I needed time to kind of let my body rest, because I've had a couple of bad injuries over the last 3 or 4 years, and you know, I kind of left working out alone for a few weeks, and then I kind of slowly got back into it. But obviously having 4 children, you're constantly running around and doing stuff anyway, and I've been busy with other stuff, but I think it's so important for any person to stay fit and healthy, just for health reasons more than anything.
And how active are your children then? How do you encourage them to, you know, do more activities?
Well, as a parent, I've always been obviously a sportsman, kind of, that has always been outside, keeping active, keeping fit, and I've kind of embedded that into my children. I think it's so important that parents do that, because I think it's so important in not just to be a sportsman, sportswoman. I think it's important in life, you know, for kids to stay healthy, for kids to stay fit, to eat the right things, to drink the right things. And I think that's what's so important. It's not just about, you know, becoming a great sportsman. It's about, you know, staying healthy in life.
And I have this image of you all kind of in the back garden having a kick around with Victoria there as well. Yeah. Is that what happens?
She's up at 6:30 every morning running.
Is she?
Yeah, so she's very fit.
She's got a head start then.
And Harper sits there and watches her, so she's learning. But no, the boys are always out. They're always doing some kind of sport, and it's not, you know, it doesn't have to be football just because their dad's a football player or a retired football player. It doesn't mean that they'll naturally go into that game. You know, maybe they will. If they do, then great. But you know, I just want them to be outside. I want them to be outside playing instead of sitting in watching TV and, you know, and doing all that kind of stuff. Because there are, you know, we spoke about it with the kids. There's so many distractions out there, and it's about, you know, that focus. And when children have had focus and got that focus, you know, they become so determined.
But do you secretly hope, though, that one of them will follow in your footsteps?
Of course I do. You know, I'd love one of them to be a football player. It might end up being Harper. She might go into it. I mean, we shouldn't show Victoria this, but I think, you know, if one of the boys go on to play football, then great. But I just want them to be happy, I want them to be healthy, and I want them to be fit, and simple as that.
And talking about children, I have to ask you, we have the royal birth coming up very shortly. What advice would you give to William and Kate? I know you're friends. What advice would you give to them? Because you're a bit of an expert now. They're going to be first-time parents.
I don't think they need my advice. I think they've got so many amazing mentors and, you know, parents around them. You know, I think and grandparents, you know, I think they'll learn from them, and I think William and I think Kate's they're going to be amazing parents, because they're so loving to all the children. You see the way they are, and you know, obviously I've seen more of William than I have of Kate, but I think, you know, William has been in all of our lives for so many years, and we've seen him grow from that, you know, from that young boy into an unbelievable gentleman. And I think that's an amazing quality that he shows, and I think, you know, that as a father is so important.
And any advice on baby names for them in that case? Because I know, you and Victoria went for different things. Well, yeah, that's a good
David's
suggestion.
Not bad.
You think they should go for David?
I think they should go for David, if a boy.
Now, we've just had the Lions win, we've had Andy Murray winning Wimbledon, we've got the Ashes on as well. Are you hoping it's going to be another great British sporting summer?
It already has been. You know, I think that you know, in the last week has been incredible. I was in Singapore and I was lucky enough to be sat next to an Australian guy that wasn't very happy at the meal, I must admit. He was very down about the Lions, but you know, I patted him on the back a few times and just mentioned the result. But it's so amazing for us to have, you know, so much success. I think obviously with the Lions, it's incredible for children to watch the success that we've had, and then obviously with Andy, you know, after the Olympics last year, and after obviously what happened at Wimbledon last year, you know, I think everyone really was so behind him this time. Obviously they was behind him last time, but I think what he went through and his speech, I was in the crowd after that, and it was kind of, you know, it was heart. It really got to everyone, I think. To perform like he did in that heat, with that pressure, you know, playing at home, I know what it's like as an England player to play in front of our own fans. It's one of the best feelings, but it's also, there's a certain amount of pressure, and I think, you know, Andy showed so many times throughout the whole competition, you know, how tough he is mentally and physically, of course, and yeah, it's a proud moment for everyone.
And can you believe it is nearly a year now since you marked the start of the Olympics, that speedboat moment down the Thames?
Yeah.
But is there a worry that the legacy hasn't lived up to expectation? You're an ambassador for it, you're a really big part in all of it. How do you feel about that?
I think the legacy of the Olympics will always be there. I don't think that anyone can question that, because I think that our country do things in a way where we're very famous for how we bring sportsmen through and how we continue the legacy of a big competition. And I think the way we ran that Olympics, the way we was kind of involved in, for me, one of the most successful Olympics that there has been. You know, I obviously haven't been to all of them, but I've seen many of them, and to be part of this one in our own country, in part of London where I grew up, you know, that was very special. And like I said, we will keep that legacy going because, you know, it's what we do.
Challenges are good. Challenges always bring the best out in people. It shows a side of you that sometimes you've not seen before, or other people have not seen before. So challenges for me are really important in life.
And finally, what is next for you now? There's talk about you maybe owning a Major League Soccer club. There's talk about you, you know, being a pundit, or you're going to continue the modelling, or even these acting rumours that we might see you in Bond. What's
I know,
the truth
apparently
in that?
so. No, that was just another one of these golden balls moment that Victoria kind of threw out there, and it kind of stuck. So apparently I'm going to be the next Bond, according to my wife. But no, that's not true. I've obviously had a few offers from different people regarding movies over the years, and you know, I think I'm better sticking to the sport that I actually know. Punditry, I think I'm going to leave that to Gary. You know, I'm not going to get involved in that because he's so good at it, and he's always been great at talking, so I think I'll leave that to him. But the MLS football club is something that I'm obviously very involved in, because I have the option to own a club in America, and when I moved there, I committed to the league, and I committed to the sport in that country and making it bigger. And if this is the way that I can give back in that sense, then to own a franchise, to own a team would be very special, and something that, you know, I'm really interested in. I'm not interested in being a manager. I love coaching kids. I love being involved in days like today with the kids, but being an owner is something that I'm a lot more interested in than anything else.
And are you back here in England, though? Is this where you're planning to call home from now on?
London will always be our home. You know, that's never going to change. But you know, we've got a home in LA still. We regard that as a place where we had such an amazing time living there, and the American people kind of welcomed us like one of their own, and that was very special. So we're spending a bit of time in London. We're also spending a bit of time in America. So we're kind of jumping from place to place.
Okay, well, David Beckham, thank you very much for
You're
talking to us
welcome.
here on Sky News.
Thank you.